everyone, it's Diane from I Studio. With an apology, I'm sorry I have not given you a video in a few weeks, and I'll just give you a little overview of what's been going on with me and why I haven't been present in the studio as much lately. 2 weeks ago, I suddenly lost my dog. She was sitting on my lap, everything was fine. I took a little nap and woke up. She was on the floor having a seizure, never had a health problem at all. And she didn't make it. It was shocking, to say the least. Sent me into a depression, and I came into the studio, although many days I didn't work. I would just come in the studio and sit. And I think that there are times in our lives that we struggle with things like loss, grief, depression, other problems that can make it very difficult to do our work. Sometimes just being around the work is a healing. And that was the case with me. Just coming and sitting. I have a library. I was reading books, playing video games on my phone, whatever it is. I was here, and that was very healing for me. And now I'm back. While I was healing, I was also preparing large canvases. These aren't panels, they're canvases. I have 3, 36 inches by 66 inches. And it takes me a long time to prepare them. First, I stretched them. I had the bars custom built and beautiful. I stretched the canvas. Then I put 3 coats of gesso on the canvases. And then my final coat, I mixed gesso with molding paste. Light molding paste is what I use. And I blend this 50-50 with the gesso, thin it down with a little bit of water so it flows nicely. I put it on the top, and then it is troweled on. So my surface is fairly smooth. If my objective was to get a completely smooth surface, I could then sand this. That's not as important to me. The reason that I love the molding paste is because it gives it a very papery surface, more absorbent surface. I love the way it feels, and I do not have the weave of the canvas. I can't see the weave of the canvas, and that's interesting to me. I like this surface, and it takes a while to prepare it. Now, jobs like this, at times when you're grieving or when you're depressed, are really helpful because you don't do a lot of thinking. It's kind of a meditative, contemplative process. And you're going through the motions, and you're here, and it helps me to get back up on the horse. Another thing I did is the painting behind me. This was from a workshop that I did last September in Santa Fe. We have another one coming up this September in Santa Fe at the same place, the Santa Fe Artists Getaway. It's called Studio Raven, one of the most beautiful places that you could ever hope to work in New Mexico, with huge picture windows and beautiful view out of the windows, and it's just inspiring. There was a labyrinth that was set up outside the windows, and every morning I would go out and I would encourage the students to go out and walk the labyrinth. And most of the time when I did it, and I think when most of the students did it, we were by ourselves. So it's a very contemplative walk, and I loved it. And I painted about it the whole time I was there. Rolled that painting up and brought it home in a tube. And it sat there until a couple weeks ago when I unrolled the tube and I took it out. I had custom built stretcher bars built so I could stretch it, because when I made it, I had just tacked it up on the wall. And I'd seen pictures of it. I just wasn't that thrilled with the piece. So I brought it out of the tube, put it on the stretcher bars, and I quieted it down by isolating the shapes that I identify as stones. And I took this beautiful Faro and Ball house paint and I blocked off the noise, the areas that I thought weren't working. And I think it's working much better now. I just love it. Another thing about this piece is I like the idea of stones as memorials, stones as cairns, markers. And I was thinking about my dog and kind of honoring my dog and other people and loved ones with my rocks. They're an altar. And my husband and I, for years and years, did altar making for Day of the Dead. And I thought, this is just a continuation of the altar. It looks a little different, but that's what it is. It's an altar to my loved ones. And I think it's really quite lovely and sensitive. So I'm happy with that piece. What we're going to do today is to begin on the new pristine surfaces. And I'll tell you how we're going to do that. I ordered some earth pigments. This one I particularly love, Terra Verde. Let's see if this tells me where it's from. Italy. These are earth pigments from Italy. It's a mineral pigment. This one is a green umber, also from Italy. A beautiful, rich, dark green. And the third is sort of a yellowish green. This one's from Germany, another mineral pigment. So I am going to put some gloves on my hands. I'm going to hand rub these into the surface. I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know if it will stick. I want to do that. And then I want to use some Sumi ink to make some marks. This is Sumi ink. My husband and I have used this a lot. I believe this is from, this one I think is from China. And my husband and I studied in China and we had a little instruction in brush painting. We never got very good at it, but I sure did love it. And on the trip, I brought brushes back. I have some lovely brushes here that I want to make some marks with. Look at that. That's got to make a mark. This one I love. It's I have one that's even, 10 times bigger than this that I may use. Here's another one of the long kind of whipping ones. And then this one probably was bought here in the States somewhere. It's just kind of a average. Don't get your feelings hurt brush. It's not as fancy as these. Mark making is really something I've been thinking about lately. Sometimes working with the stencils can get pretty confining. You're working. I've likened it to coloring books before. I've said that. You've heard me. But you know, you're working within a confined space, and there are lines in the space, and you're coloring in the lines, and you get some beautiful marks. But you don't get to really spread out and cut loose. Right now, I'm longing to cut out, spread my wings a bit, which leads me to another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is our intentions. So I'm getting ready to go to Ireland for a cold wax workshop that I'm taking with Jerry McLaughlin. It's not my first time with Jerry McLaughlin. I've taken a workshop in Greece, a workshop in Mexico. He taught a workshop in my studio in Venetia. So I'm comfortable working with Jerry, and he's a master of cold wax. He wrote the book. And I do recommend that if you want to get into cold wax, that you read this book, and that's a good starting place. This is an advanced workshop, and he wants us to work on our intentions. And he's talked about intentions as short-term intentions, such as, in this painting, I want to make Cairns rock memorials. But what's my overall intention with the body of work I do? And I know for years and years and years, I've liked to work with what is left when we're no longer physically present. In the cave paintings, people put their hands down, they blew pigment through a straw, lifted their hand off, it left a hand imprint on the wall. And it's interesting because your hand is on the wall. Once you remove your hand from the wall, it's history. My hand was there. Well, our hand was there 1 second ago, and our hand was there thousands of years ago. And we've left a mark that shows our presence, and then our presence can be felt. So I do like to indicate our presence. I worked in ICU for a number of years in a hospital, and there were a lot of people that passed away in the hospital when I worked there. And it was interesting to me because they're there 1 minute and then they're not, but the presence is there in their loved ones. And everything that we leave behind in life leaves an impression. Whatever we touch holds the energy of our touch. And that's what I like to talk about. So, without getting too much deeper into that, I'm sure I've got plenty of statements to write about that. Let's see what happens with rubbing the earth pigments into the canvas. I don't know. And what might happen is it just may not stick. If that's the case, I may take a little bit of polymer medium and put the medium down, and then maybe sprinkle the pigment on that. I could brayer it in. There's a number of ways I could get the pigment in. I'm going to start with rubbing. And what will probably happen is I'll rub it in, and then I'll have to put an aerosol spray over it to set it. But before I put the aerosol spray in, I may want to make some erasures in it just to get some interesting marks there. And then after I get the background color with the earth pigments, then I'm going to try some Sumi ink. So bear with me. Okay. Here goes nothing. Haven't done this before, so you are with me on my virgin flight. I'm going to pour a little of this out. I took a drawing class with Paul Christina, and he had us cover our papers in charcoal, and then we erased into the paper to get some marks, and I thought that was pretty incredible. Another thing I want to try while I've got you. I talked about polymer medium, but what about just water? How is it going to react with water? Oh, that's different. Oh, it's different, and it's funny because I see it kind of bunching up, making these little round things. But wow, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that gorgeous? I wonder why it bundles up into some little rolls. You know what I'm talking about, these little roly-poly pieces. And then I have to decide how even do I want this color. And should I be using a cloth? I don't know if I want to add another color. It's certainly going to change it. This is that greenish gold color I told you about. This is the one from Germany. Blend it a little with the first one and see what we get. Earth Pigments. I find that earth pigments are generally pretty strong, pretty powerful. I've used red oxides before, and this time I ordered the greens. Have you guys tried these water bottles? They're a very fine mist. I love them. I think you could probably just go on Amazon and put in fine mist water bottle and see what you get. That's lovely. It's really interesting. I want to keep going like this. I'm going to get a rad too. To try to get a smooth surface. Remember I told you before, I generally have no idea what I'm doing or how it will turn out. It's all about experimenting and making mistakes. That's how we learn, and I think that's how we get excited too. I can feel a support bar under here, and that will show up. So what I do is I'll reach underneath and kind of just lift it with my hand. Try to eliminate that if I can. Sometimes you can, sometimes it's going to be there. You know, this is an underpainting, so don't worry about too much with an underpainting. Sure love this color though. See where I have a little water on the canvas? It really makes a difference. I think it would be hard to get a real even surface with what I'm doing. I think if I wanted a real even surface, I might go into a house paint. But you know, the nature of house paint is different than the nature of earth pigment. And for this one, I just wanted to give the earth pigment a try. I'm talking about the ephemeral ghost images that we can't see. So I think this material is pretty appropriate. Oh, I got a little carried away with that. Now I'm going to kind of pre-spray. See how that might work. It's just so curious to me how the pigment bunches up. It's like if you've ever erased pencil, it gets these little roly-poly shavings. That's what I'm getting here. Maybe it's just clay. Maybe because they're earth pigments, it's just almost like working with clay. I was talking to a ceramicist the other day, and she was telling me that's what she colors her clay with, is earth pigments. So now I'm crossing over into another medium. It's lovely, just lovely. I'm going to cover the whole surface and then evaluate that. And then I'm going to put the Sumi ink marks on it. And you know what that is? That's the start. And who knows where that's going to lead me. I don't think too far ahead. I just get one idea in my head and then I go for it. Do you do that? See, these let me rub them in. These little roly-polies. Little pieces of clay. Wow. Kind of want to smash those all in and then spray it again and see what's going on. That's so interesting to me. So I'm using this as a background, but you could also use this to make forms with. Like if I wanted to make rock shapes, I could use this to make rock shapes. I'm wanting a background right now. And then if I rub real hard, can I get back to my white? A little bit. It's certainly going to stain it. And I won't be able to get completely back, but I can rub some of that off if I want. And with something like this, you can let it dry and then re-wet it, and you can continue to work it, because drying it isn't going to adhere it. It's not an acrylic with a polymer. It's an earth pigment powder that will need to be fixed when I get it to the point that I'm happy. I'm going to put a aerosol fixative over it. Okay, so I've finished rubbing the surface with the earth pigment, and I've put that canvas up next to the primed canvas that it has not had the color rubbed into it, so you can see the difference. I also want to show you the difference between the rubbed in powdered pigment and what that looks like. Now, the way I did it with the fine mist water bottle, you see a lot of variations, and you see the imperfections of the canvas underneath where I primed it. And I think that's really interesting. That opposed to, I'm going to come over here and show you the house paint. Similar color, isn't it? But in the house paint, number one, you can see some brush marks. I used a brush. But it's a lot more even and a lot more solid. And I could choose to put another coat of this green on this painting and make that really, really solid. Like some of the areas on this, then you can see what happens when you sand into it. You can get things that come up from underneath. So just putting that little bit of earth pigment on it, I learned a lot about effects I could get with the earth pigment. There were times in rubbing it that I could see the marks of the rag very dominant, and I thought, those are beautiful. Maybe I want to use some of those at some time later in the painting. But for now, let's go to step 2, which is let's put some sumi ink marks down, see what we can get. I have taken a small dish and put my sumi ink in the dish. I'm using my painting itself as the tabletop, and this is the brush. And I have soaked the brush in a bucket of water. I'm going to take some of the water out. When you're working with sumi ink, water can make the sumi ink lighter. So I was thinking I'd like to put some circle shapes on this, like on the rock painting behind me. Now, what's interesting with that one is I had a lot of paint down first, and then I blocked off areas around the colors and created rock shapes. This one, I'm simply going to create some shapes. Now, I want you to think about the brush, what it does. You can press, lift. I know one thing that we were taught in China is if you were going to jump, you bend your knees and jump up, spring up. So if you're going to go to the right, you start to the left. It's kind of like the spring in your jump. So we're going to go to the right. Let's start to the left and then to the right. Right and then the left. Oh, interesting. I won't leave all these marks on. I just want to get some action. Some kind of action here. I talked about the arc of my body. What is the natural movement of your body? It's different than mine, I can guarantee you. But we all have a natural movement. Let's get some water on this. Boom. So what I do is I look at the marks because I'm no calligrapher. I'll look at the marks and see which marks I want to keep, and I'll get rid of the others by painting over them. So some of these marks will be important while others will not. There's a lot of ways you can get marks with your brushes. So let's put her up on the wall and see what we've got. Okay, there it is in its very rough and raw state. There's a lot of energy in there that I like. It's a little busy for me now. I'm going to try quieting it down with the house paint. Let's see what we can get. Now I'm taking a little bit of house paint. This is the Faro and Ball Terra Verde, the same one I used in there with the rock painting. And let's see what happens when we put some of this on top of the pigments and the Sumi ink. I never know what I'm doing. This is all experimenting. Let's see. I don't like this line here. And my ink may be a little wet for this. You never know until you try. And one brush mark leads to another. I'm already saying, what if I went over these brush marks with the powdered pigments? What could I get? That's interesting to me. It's a similar color, a very different treatment. Oops. Black is getting in there. Stand back, see what you've got. Yeah, there's some possibilities going on here. I like to work on top of the tables, and it's always going to look different to you when it's on the table as opposed to when it's on the wall. This is just the beginning stages. It doesn't really matter at this point because the second stage of the painting will be a little more concerned with honing in on a composition. Right now it doesn't matter. And we're getting some drips. You see some drips coming down. It's actually, it's fairly interesting. Another thing we need to do is turn it. Whoops, that didn't work. This is different. In this orientation, it's different. So the painting may turn. It may turn many, many times before we find a composition, before we're resolved with what's going on. This is how I start. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sure it's going to be a completely different painting when we come back to it next time, and hopefully that will be next week. Thanks for your patience. I'll see you again. Remember, painting is a practice. Practice makes perfect. Sometimes takes a lot of practice too. I don't know about this. We'll see. Talk to you later. Bye.